Did Camp Chef just knock off Jetboil as the king of cook systems? Stick around if you want to find out. So the other day, I found myself at Walmart in the sporting goods section, and just like any time I'm at a store with a sporting goods department, I find myself checking out camping gear. And I stumbled across this right here, which is the Camp Chef Stryker 200M. And that M stands for Muti-Fuel, as in isobutane and propane. And it happened to be $65. That kind of got me thinking, could this be better than a Jetboil? So what we're going to do is dive into this thing, check it out, and see if it's good enough to make itself into your camp kitchen. Now, before we get started, let me just say this is not a dig on Jetboil whatsoever. I happen to have one. I've used it for years. I just don't take it hiking with me anymore. As I got more experienced and more confident in what I was doing, I kind of looked at this as being something that took up maybe a little too much space and weighed a little too much as far as backpacking gear goes. So this pretty much stays with my car camping equipment, and that's how I'm going to look at this, through the lens of car camping and whether or not it's a better option than Jetboil. Now, I'm not going to say that if you have a Jetboil, you need to ditch it and go buy one of these right here. What I am saying is if you don't have either and you're on the fence and thinking about buying a cook system for car camping, then you might want to check this out. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and check out the stats. When it comes to weight, the Jetboil comes in at 487 grams as opposed to the Camp Chef Stryker weight of 734 grams. This isn't much of a concern if used for car camping, but if needed, the weight can be reduced on the Camp Chef to 537 grams by removing the propane adapter and the bottle stand. The Stryker is 9 inches tall with a diameter of 4 3/4 inches, opposed to the Jetboil's height of 7 inches and a diameter of 4 inches. This can be considered a pro or a con for each cooking system, depending on your intended use. So let's talk about capacity. Stryker 200 can hold 4 cups. Jetboil, 2. Now, to be fair, the Jetboil can hold more than 2 cups of water, but the problem you run into is if you fill this thing all the way up and it's boiling like crazy, you go to grab a hold of it, all you got is this little fabric handle right here, which means you're going to have to get your hand in there awful close to some boiling water, and more than likely, you're going to get burned, which is no fun. The Stryker, on the other hand, has this nice handle, gives you something safe to grab a hold of, and I believe that's why you can utilize the entire pot. So what we're going to do now is just go ahead and open up the Jetboil, and you can kind of see what comes with the Jetboil Flash, and we'll use that as a baseline to compare the Stryker to it, and that way you can kind of have an idea of what you get and the extra things that you're going to get when you buy the Camp Chef. Now, one thing I thought was kind of cool when I first got this was this lid that had the hole in the center, because I always kind of thought, oh yeah, I can use it as a French press, but I found that this is probably one of the weakest parts of the Jetboil, and the reason is it never seems to totally secure to the top. It fits on there, but because it's kind of a somewhat rigid, flexible plastic, it never really seems to grip down. There's like nothing that actually grips the lip here to hold it on. And what I found is that when I would take this hiking, a lot of times this would fall off and the inside would spill out a little bit, usually when I was pulling it out of the pack. So I never really that fond of this feature once I got over the novelty of it. Another thing that you will get when you buy a Flash is this pot stand, which I never ever used, because honestly the only thing I ever did with this was boil water to add to a dehydrated meal, and I never needed to use anything bigger than what I had right here for myself. You have the fuel, of course that doesn't come with it, but that's about the biggest size canister you're going to get inside of a Jetboil. You might be able to finagle something a little bit bigger, but this right here is probably going to be about it. at least for the Flash. Of course, we have the stove. Let's slide that out of the way. So, you know, standard stuff if you're familiar with it, or, you know, if you are new to it and somehow don't know. You have a igniter right here, of course your rosebud, and your valve that has a like a flip over handle to seat it and get it out of the way when you're storing it. And you have this right here, which is your stand for your fuel bottle, or your, sorry, not fuel bottle, I'm showing my age there, canister. And all that does is helps you lock it into place and secure it. And you just snap that down in there, and you know, it'll keep it from tipping over or make it less likely to tip over. One thing that the Jetboil does have that the Camp Chef doesn't, and I'm kind of surprised by this. I don't know why they never included it, or they don't include it, is this bottom part right here, which serves two purposes. Obviously, it protects the flux ring on the bottom, but it also serves as a measuring cup. As a matter of fact, and you probably cannot see this because of the type of plastic, but it actually has a measuring line right inside here that says 1 cup. And I never really used it that much, but it's nice that it was there. Now, this is kind of a flimsy plastic. This will break pretty easy. Matter of fact, I think I had to replace mine because I snapped one of the clips. But, you know, that's that on the Jetboil. Now, we'll move on to the Stryker here and take a look at it. Now that we've had a chance to look at the Jetboil to get a baseline, let's take a look at the Stryker and see why I think that this is a better cooking system than the Jetboil, at least when it comes to car camping, and maybe the exception of backpacking where you might be cooking for more than yourself. So anyway, let's go ahead and have a look. The first noticeable difference that you're going to see is the handle and the locking mechanism that holds everything in, and that is basically all held together by these 2 brass studs on here that are attached by braided metal cable, and this is actually riveted to the pot itself. And you just press down and unlatch that. It's pretty durable. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And the next thing is going to be the handle. Nice locking handle, keeps your hands safely away from anything that's boiling in there. You're not going to get burned, which was always an issue that I was concerned with when it came to the Jetboil. I was always afraid that I was going to burn myself with that thing when I used to take it backpacking with me. So having this is a very nice feature. When it comes to the lid, it's just a nice hard plastic lid. Now, I'm not sure if you can use this when you're cooking boiling water. I would assume you could, because it has a nice little drain hole right here, and it also has this nice rubber handle on it that looks like it's made to keep you from getting burned. The next thing we have is the stand for your 1 pound propane bottle. And the legs fold out, very similar to the fuel canisters for the isobutane. Just fit that in there and it makes it nice and snug. There's absolutely no way you could use this stove with this bottle without having this kind of stand. So it was absolutely necessary that they include it. We'll go ahead and set that out of the way. We'll go ahead and take our fuel out of there. That does not come with the stove. But as long as we're already here and talking about fuel, you can pack everything inside of this stove if you're using this size fuel canister. It's the same one you'd pack inside of the Jetboil. Now, you can use a much larger canister if you're willing to leave behind the stand for the propane for the 1 pound bottles. If you're willing to leave that behind, then you can fit this in here. It'll take up almost all the space inside of it, but you'll be able to get it all in there. And if you combine the volume of this cook system with the amount of fuel that you can carry with this, you could cook for a lot of people for quite a while. So now let's have a look at the stove. this out of the way. And this should be looking very familiar. Now, almost identical to the Jetboil. Got the same kind of rosebud burner right here. The sides come down the same. The pot itself locks in the exact same way as the Jetboil does. Your fuel adjustment valve almost identical, and it folds over and seats itself just like the Jetboil does. And of course, you have the stand for your isobutane canisters. Very similar, if not exactly the same as the Jetboil. Might be made of a different kind of plastic, not 100% sure on that. But it was so similar that I was actually looking to find the little Jetboil logo. And of course your fuel canisters snap right on there, no problems. And if you're wondering, it will accommodate the much larger canister. But you just gotta get it in there, but once it's in, perfectly fine. Another nice feature about this is that it is stamped in the inside from 1 to 4 cups, and also in liters also. So you have some degree of being able to measure what you're cooking inside of here. Now, I saved this little piece for last because I wanted to talk about how important this is. So this is your propane adapter that you're going to thread onto your 1 pound bottle to allow that to be used with this stove. The reason that I feel like this is so important is because, one, this is a $15 to $20 adapter and the stove is $65. So you have a $65 stove, and for some reason it's only $65 at Walmart. Even at Camp Chef's website, it's like 130 bucks. But you get this with the stove, which makes it very versatile. Almost everybody has a stove that uses the 1 pound propane tanks in their car camping gear. So that allows you to be able to use the same fuel. This fuel right here, not always so easy to find, not readily available. Usually you got to go to a hiking store or camping gear store. Sometimes Walmart has it, a lot of times they don't. But the 1 pound bottles, almost every grocery store has it over where they keep the charcoal. So you get a whole lot of value there when you throw this into the mix. In case anybody is wondering how all this goes back together, I'll go ahead and do a brief demonstration of how to fit everything in there. I'm sure you figured this out on your own, but I'll do it anyway. So fold up your canister stand, drop that in. That was a very unpleasant noise. We'll go ahead and grab the stove. And you just want to make sure the legs of the stove fit in the empty spaces along the triangle. And then you want to take your fuel, go ahead and put it in, and then you want to take the stand right here, and you have to turn this sometimes because there's some rivets over here on the side, so you might have to turn this until it finds an opening, and then it'll just drop right down into it. Take your adapter, throw that in there, take your stand or your lid, put that on, and then close everything up. Nice and tight. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to spill out in your backpack. Now, just to demonstrate that you can take one of these larger fuel canisters with you, we'll go ahead and pull this out. But just keep in mind, if you're going to use the larger fuel canister, you're going to have to decide what kind of fuel you want to use, because you will not be able to take the propane adapter with you. Well, actually, you can take the propane adapter with you, but you just won't be able to take the bottle stand with you, which will probably be incredibly dangerous, so you might as well leave them both behind. But you just take your larger fuel canister here, put it in, and you're going to have to push down, and you'll hear that snap down inside of the rings of the stove. And because the bottom of these canisters are curved, it's not going to mess up the rosebud burner or the igniter on the stove itself. Once you have that, you go ahead and you can put the lid on. Now, the cool thing is the lid has this little piece cut out, so it's going to fit right over the threads on that fuel canister. And then you can close it up. Now, I read somewhere that or I might have seen it in a video. I think maybe Paleo Hiker covered this, but for some reason, Coleman fuel canisters will not work in this, at least the large ones. They won't snap down inside of the ring, so you lose just that little bit of depth, and it won't allow it to close properly. And you do have to keep the fuel cap off. But like I said, because this is rubber and it has that indentation, it will cover up those threads and keep them safe for you. And it'll be in there all nice and secure. Not going anywhere. Definitely not spilling out inside your backpack if you decide to take it hiking with you. So now that we've pulled it apart and done a bit of an overview, let's see how fast this can actually bring 4 cups of water to a boil. All right. All right, so 6 minutes to boil 4 cups of water, and that's just water straight out of the tap. Now we'll move on to the next test, which will be to use the 1 pound propane bottle. Whew, there we go. Very interesting. It actually seems like it's taking longer for the propane to bring the water to boil than the isobutane, and I really would have thought that had been the other way around. All right. So that took roughly 7 minutes, 10 to 12 seconds to bring that to a rolling boil. So the boil test actually had me stumped for a minute. Now, as far as the boil time for the isobutane, I wasn't surprised by that. I was putting 45-degree tap water in there. It's winter time here. The pipes are cold. We were not working under optimal conditions. So, we got a realistic, real-world result, from a realistic, real-world condition. Simple as that. So no worries there. I was surprised, though, by the boil time with the propane. I was expecting that to come to a boil maybe a minute, minute and a half faster than the isobutane. Had me stumped, but after thinking about it, it made sense. This is an anodized aluminum can, just like the Jetboil, and it uses that same flux ring just like the Jetboil, and that's made to trap all that heat, focus all that energy into the bottom of the can. Now, propane burns at about twice the temperature of isobutane. So this little fella right here is not just an adapter, but it's also a pressure regulator, and I think it has to be that way. I think if you were to let propane flow through this into that stove or that rosebud as fast and with as much pressure as the isobutane, it would probably burn a hole straight into the bottom of the cup or melt the flux ring. That's what I'm thinking. That's my theory anyway. So if you got a better one, leave it in the comment section, but that's what I'm going to go with. I think it's really just more of a safety measure to preserve the integrity of the cook system. So after all we've seen, what are my final thoughts? Well, first off, let me say that if you got a Jetboil, keep it and use it. It's a fantastic stove that has paved the way for all the other cook systems that are out on the market today. But if you're still shopping around, you can't go wrong with the Stryker 200M, and that's for car camping or if you're going to be hiking and need to cook for a large group. Now, when you throw in the fact that it has this large capacity, the ability to use dual fuel, and you can also pick it up for a ridiculously low price right now, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better bang for your buck. Well, campers, that about wraps up this video on the Camp Chef Stryker 200 Multi-Fuel Stove. Hopefully I provided you with some information to help you decide whether you want to make this part of your camp kitchen or not. And if you did find it informative and helpful, jump down there to the comment section, say something nice, maybe leave me a like, or even subscribe. And with all that being said, I'm Patrick with Uncle Bill's Camping. Thank you for stopping by to check out my videos, and I will see you fine people the next time around.